Hello everyone, my name is Donna and I'll be representing the Institute for European Institutional of Economics. First we will begin with content. Before we can talk about the institution's precision on the European harmonization of contract law, we need to have an idea and understanding of the demand and supply diagram. Thus a definition is required first. Then followed by the explanation of the demand and supply diagram and what it entails. Then the effects of the EU harmonization on the demand and supply diagram. Then leading to the advantages and disadvantages of the EU harmonization on businesses. And then concluding with the institution challenging the European Commission's proposal to harmonize in the first place. Firstly, we will have to define demand and supply. Demand, which is the consumer's desire and willingness to pay a price for a specific good or services. Supply is the amount that suppliers are willing to produce for a certain price. This is the demand and supply diagram, which is the basic theory of economics, is that there will always be demand and supply, and that these two curves will intersect, making the equilibrium, which is also known as the invisible hand. Thus, as seen within the diagram, this is just an example to explain a theory. For instance, as seen within the diagram, this is a pizza market, pizza slices. There is demand for pizza slices created by the consumers at the price of €3, and at the price of €3, the producers of pizza are willing to supply 8 slices of pizza. This is just an explanation of theories. However, the demand and supply curve has the ability to shift depending on the demand and supply for a certain good. Within this diagram, you can see which is a shift in demand. However, it is for banana product of bananas. As you can see, in E0 is the current demand and supply for bananas. Consumers are willing to buy bananas for, let's say, €1, and a supplier is willing to supply 100 units of bananas for €1. However, for example, scientists have recently found that the bananas can help cure cancer. This would obviously increase the consumer's demand to buy bananas, which creates a shift in the demand curve to the right, meaning the consumer demand for bananas have gone up. Thus, the demand curve shifts to the right, making the price for bananas increasing to €2. Because that there is an increase in the price of bananas, suppliers are willing to supply more of bananas. Thus, the units of bananas shift from 100 to 150 units. As you can see here, the demand curve can shift to the right when there is increase in demand. However, the supply curve can also shift. The purpose of explaining the demand and supply curve is important because the effects of EU harmonization on contract law has an effect on the demand and supply curve. For instance, in the event that the EU does harmonize contract law, this means that it would be easier for companies to conclude contracts. This means that there will be an increase in supply. Therefore, the supply curve 1 shifts to the right, becoming supply curve 2. Because there is more supply of goods, which can be seen within the diagram, changing from 100 units to 150 units, the prices of goods will also drop from €2 to €1. This is simply because through EU harmonization, by making it easier to trade between countries, it would therefore be an increase in supply in general within the EU. Thus, the price will drop in general within the EU too, which can be seen within the equilibrium. EU harmonization. However, once the prices have dropped and there is an increase in supply of goods in general, which we just explained in the shift in supply curve, the advantages would be consumers would have more choices from a range of different products. Consumers would also benefit from the drop in prices of goods in general within the EU. Furthermore, this would increase competition between firms. Since prices have dropped and supply has increased, firms would have to be more efficient in its money distribution or have to lower its costs and price to compete with other firms. However, there are some disadvantages. For instance, more firms have to pay a higher tax rate. How will the EU harmonization be financed? Furthermore, What happens when small, medium-sized enterprises do not want to sell abroad? Even though it is easier to do so, not all firms want to expand and sell abroad. Some firms would like to remain small. EU harmonization would harm them financially. The local small firms would have to compete with all sorts of foreign products and foreign firms. EU harmonization would make it even more easier for big companies to enter another market, which local small medium-sized firms would have to compete with. Small medium-sized firms represent 99% of the business population. Does this actually mean competition is actually bad? Thus, in conclusion, the EU harmonization of rules for businesses will have its positive effects due to the increase in supply, efficiency, and decrease in prices. However, we must focus on the negative effects it has on small and medium-sized enterprises. For example, the potential increase in taxation may affect small businesses more than compared to large firms. Although, more importantly, we must protect local firms local firms that do not wish to sell abroad, but now will have to compete with all sorts of businesses and thus harming them financially. The Institutes of Economics would like to request the European Commission to bring light to these issues. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, please?